All right, so this week we're going to be talking about a CB350 project that we've had for a number of years. We finished it back in August and now the customer's ready to pick it up. So I wanted to do a little show and tell and talk about the things that we did on this bike before it leaves here. So we're going to start at the front of the bike and kind of work our way back. For the headlight, we're running the LSL headlight with a LED bulb in it. We like the LED bulbs in the CB350s because the charging system on these is not that strong. We did upgrade the charging system to the Rix Hotshot. That gives us a little more amperage, but even still, it's just better to go with the LED for this particular bike. You know, it's a noticeable difference. To mount the headlight, we're running the Moto brackets. And again, we're tying into the lower section of this fork, which this fork is from a 2006 Gixxer 600. That's why we've got the gold forks with the silver lowers. And then we're running the Meyer-built Metalworks front fender. For brakes, we're running the Cognito brakes that came on the Gixxer fork. And then obviously the rotors. And then for the front wheel, we're running our conversion hub with a Warp 9 rim. That is a 3.5 by 17 rim. And then the tire that we put on this bike was just a tire we had at the shop, which is a 120/60. Normally on these, I run a 120/70 just to get a little more meat. So that's why we're running a 160. I would tell them, you know, hey, when this thing's done, just go ahead and upgrade it to a 170 and kind of clear out this gap. But that's why we have the extra gap on the fender, which we normally wouldn't have. The triple trees, there are fixed offset triple trees, and because we're running the 17-inch tire, we're running 30mm offset. And these triple trees have the integrated Motoscope Mini with the indicator mod. For the controls, the brake master cylinder and the clutch master cylinder are both from a Hayabusa. The Hayabusa stuff has, it's clean looking because the reservoirs are built into it in a nice little box. So sometimes I use them, and the reason being is because of that, just that I like how clean it is. For the switches, we're running two 3-button switches, which these switches are from the original Moto Gadget switches. We use two 3-buttons because we do right and left turn signal, horn, headlight, start and stop, and that takes a 5. And then we use the additional push button to control the gauge. The gauges do come with their own push buttons, but I prefer to run them right in the switches so that you don't have an extra switch laying around. For the grips, we're just using Biltwell grips. The clip-ons are the Woodcraft clip-ons. No rise, just the normal clip-on. For the tank comes from a CB360. I like the design of the 360 tank. It's more straight lines than the original CB350 tank. That's a little more rounded. The calc was made by Cliff Meyer at Meyer-built Metalworks. This is something we used to offer, but just due to his workload right now, we don't offer these. And then we had the integrated tail loop with the LED brake light integrated. On the CB350 frames, if you're familiar with them, after it comes off the backbone or the spine of the bike, it goes into a sheet metal. To eliminate the sheet metal and just kind of clean things up, we actually cut the frame right behind the gas tank, or right before the end of the gas tank, and then replace it all with round tubing. Up at the gas tank, the sheet metal that's left over, we just kind of wrap it around the tubing, and then that kind of, you know, cleans up the look, and then you don't really notice it because that section is up under the gas tank. That work was done by Cliff Meyer. You know, down here at the bottom parts of the tube or the frame, we just kind of slipped the tubing into the lower half of the tubing. That was the original frame. It kind of has an original look where things kind of miter into one another. Then we're running the shock mount kit that we offer. The seat was upholstered by Wheelborne. He typically does bags, but we kind of got him a favor out of him and got him to upholster a seat. And it turned out really nice, no complaints there. For the motor, we did refresh it, the top end of it, replacing the gaskets, the rings, had it, the cylinder walls cleaned up. An exhaust stud was broken off, so we had to remove the head to fix that. So while we were in there, we just went ahead and refreshed the top of the motor. It wasn't something we were originally going to do. It wasn't part of the project, but since we had to do that, we figured we may as well go through and clean things up anyway. And then the lower case, we just replaced gaskets and just stopped all the oil leaks that were happening down there. The battery box is just something that we made up. It goes where the original tool case was. Normally we would have mounted the battery up under the cowl, but we are running the Moto Gadget M unit on this bike, so that is housed up under this cowling. So we didn't have the real estate there, so we figured, this would be a good place to put it, and we just tie into the original holes. This is a product I would like to make and put out on the site, so I'll probably in the coming weeks we'll go ahead and get that into production and make that available. The carburetors, we're using the Mikuni kit. It's a 30mm carburetor, and that kit includes the boots that mount to the head, and it also includes the filters. On these kits with the 30mm, I don't change any of the jetting that it comes with. It does come with additional jets, but even with the pretty much the open pipe and the filters, I'm not having to rejet it. The only thing you're going to want to do with these is make sure that you sync them, because that will affect it. It makes a huge difference how well it's synced, and you'll have to adjust the idle control screws. But other than that, I don't play with the jetting, and I've had good success with it. I think this is probably the third bike that I've used these on, and again, I've never fooled with the jetting on them. Just use them as they come. For the foot controls, the person that this bike is for is on the shorter side. I don't even think they're 5 feet. So rear sets really wasn't an option. We wanted to keep it comfortable for them and keep them up front. Putting the rear set back would have made it difficult for them to ride. So we kept the original location of the foot controls. The only thing that we did was replace the foot pegs with our XSR foot pegs, and they just happened to bolt up, and that's why we used them. For the exhaust, we're using the Mac headers. They come black, and then for the mufflers, we're using Cone Engineering mufflers. These aren't the quiet core; these are the normal straight through bore. So they don't muffle the sound a whole heck of a lot. They really just take the harsh edge off. And then to mount these, we just tied into this bracket that originally held the passenger pegs. The exhaust brackets that have the additional hole for mounting, and we just tied it right into the frame. And it worked good. It just happened to fall into a location. So we're pretty pleased with that. Earlier we were talking about the clutch control, or the clutch master cylinder, which is not normally what's on a CB350. On the back tire, we'll talk about that now. The back tire, we're running a 160/60/17, which is a really wide tire for this bike. We're running it on a 4 1/4 17 rim. And in order to do that, we had to offset the sprockets. On a CB350, if you try and offset the sprocket on the front, the clutch mechanism that's in there actually, when you actuate the clutch, hits the chain. So you can't really offset these chains. In order to offset the sprockets, we ended up making a whole clutch cover, and then we housed a slave cylinder inside of there to go to a hydraulic clutch, and then we could lengthen the push rod shaft that actuates the clutch inside of there. So basically, putting a longer shaft forced us to move the mechanism outside or push it further out. So it's a neat little piece. It serves a purpose just for this. It does make for a nice clutch lever though. And then for the front sprocket, we're using a CB550 750 sprocket that's a 3/8 offset or 9.5 millimeter offset. It doesn't exactly bolt up. In order for us to make that work, we took our off-the-shelf sprocket that we make for the 550, 750, and we kind of skimmed some off the back to reduce the engagement length because the engagement length was too long for the 350. It's kind of a pain in the butt because the sprockets are case hardened, so you have to get through the hardening, so just be aware of that if you do plan to do that. And then on the rear, just made an aluminum sprocket to get us our 9.5 offset, and then it reuses all the original components of the hub. On the rear hub, we're using the stock rear hub with the stock drum brake. You know, if you have a CB550 or 750, they go to a 40 hole, and a Warp 9 only comes in a 36 hole. So on the twin bikes, we can use this rim. But like I said, 36 hole, it worked. We used custom spokes and we got it all to mount up. And then we ran this big tire. For those shocks, we're running the Öhlins piggybacks. It's a great shock, plenty of clearance, even with offsetting the chain. Oh, and I almost forgot to talk about the tank color. So the color of this tank, originally there was a Singer Porsche that was very similar to this color that I really like. I really like the color of it. This is a girl's bike, so you know we didn't want something too feminine or too masculine. So this color was kind of like the perfect color because it kind of has a purple hue, but it's still silver. And actually, this tank, the color that we picked, the closest thing that we could find off the shelf to that Porsche color was this color, and this is actually from the old SHO Tauruses. I think it was like from a 90 SHO Taurus. So it's kind of cool. You know, once you see that, it kind of jogs your memory of those cars. But you know, looking at it, you would never associate the two. At least I would have never associated the two. Oh, for the ignition, we're using the Charlie Place ignition, and that was a straightforward kit. Pretty pleased with it. You know, we upgraded the coils just to replace them and get some fresh ones in there. So yeah, I think that just about covers it for the 350 that we have here. It's a great little bike. You know, it's a lot of fun to ride around the city, stoplight to stoplight. It's got plenty of pickup, and it's super light. It's a really light bike. So you know, hopefully she really enjoys this bike.